Now my brother lives in Berlin, and every so often I go to visit him. And every time I've come, he's lived there 35 years. Every time I come, there's a new girlfriend. You know, after he got married and he got divorced, then he started this cycle. And each one was a little stranger. You know, there was the Turkish one, and she was sort of normal. Then there was the German one, and then there was the Czech one, and then there was the English one, and each one of them seemed to get a little... Well, finally, the last time, well, at this time that I came, there was a Romanian one. So I don't know, is anybody here from Romania? Okay. I am actually half Romanian, so I can say it. Yeah, we're weird, you know. I guess a country that gives you Dracula and werewolves and strange people, and I can't even pronounce that guy's name who, you know, the guy who was the president. I mean, it's a strange country. And all my relatives are either, that are from it, are in the arts or are bankers. I mean, it was like we seem to take one extreme or the other. So anyway, my brother gets this Romanian girlfriend. I'm real excited to meet her. You know, she's Romanian. And I've never been to Romania. And I'm hoping she'll tell me all about it. So as soon as I meet her, well, you sort of knew something. Because as soon as you walked into the room where she was, even if you had flipped on the lights, it was as if they dimmed. There was something about her that was very dark and took whatever joy there was and squeezed it. Well, she found out I was a storyteller. And of course she wanted to tell me stories. And I will be honest, my favorite stories are ghost stories or weird stories like that. And that's another reason and another story, and I have many stories to tell. But this one, this was about, her name was Susanna, her great-great-great-grandmother. And she told me this story, interestingly enough, at the drop of a hat. So, here goes. Susanna's great-great-great-whatever grandmother, her name was Anna Marie, which also actually is my mother's name, which means bitter grace. And it seems that her life was full of bitter grace. For she had lost her husband right after she had delivered her 12th child. But she had the grace of these beautiful children who together, they had worked on the farm, they had given great grandchildren. Her life, though it had been hard, was still full of beauty. But it didn't take long for it to turn. And so there was a time when a man named Georges Q came and said that he wanted to buy the farm. Now this was a time when she was known to be going through a lot of trouble, and she was able to stave him off and did not sell to him, but she wondered always how he had known. Now their little farm was over the mountain, which actually for us, where I live, is a small hill, but for them it was a mountain. And you had to get into town, you had to go over the mountain and into town. And that's what she did every couple of weeks, because there were things to do, people to see. She wanted to go to church, she wanted to pray, she wanted to talk to her friends. She had, over the years, been separated from them both by distance and her own age. So one time she was setting out to go there, and it was rather late. And her boys said to her, "Mama, you should take us with you." And she said, "No, I'll be okay. I am strong. I can handle anything." "Mama, you know who you will see on the road. It is dangerous." She goes, "No," and she laughed. She was a round woman with strong arms and a strong mind. "I have been through all that I've been through. I will make it into town and back before the sun comes down." But as it came, she did not. She went into town, she came out, and it seemed as if it was dark, or almost dark, because when she looked up, leaving town, she saw a full moon. And she started up this little mountain, and as she was about halfway up, it was cold. She felt a cold all around her that she had not felt before, so she grabbed her shawl, pulled it closer, then she continued up, and then she looked up. And there, silhouetted against the full moon, was a man in dark, dark black, on a dark, dark black horse, with a hat, with a feather. She could see that when he swirled his cape, for it was a fine cape, it was lined in red as blood, and she could see his eyes spark, and as he moved his hands, it was as if the residue was left, and she could see the trail of white. And then within no time at all, he was right there by her, and she fell into a ditch, and she pulled herself up. The first thing she saw was his foot. She'd never seen a man with a foot like that. It was oddly shaped. It didn't seem to have a heel. And then she looked up his legs and into his clothes, and the fabric was fine. It was silken, and it was velvet, and it shone and it pulled, and it shone and it pulled. And then she came up to his face and his eyes. She could not hold the eyes, and she looked down. But she knew from what she saw of his clothing and what it would make that he must be very wealthy. And this was a place where no one had much of anything. And she dropped to a curtsy and said, "Good evening, sir. Your lordship, is there any reason you have stopped? Can I help you in any way?" He said, and he lifted his hat and he tipped it to her. "Stand up," in a voice that seemed to go down forever and have no resonance outside. And why? "I am looking for Georges. You." And she had seen him in the town. He was drunk often these days, and he hadn't drunk before. He was the richest man in town. And no one actually had known how he had become so rich, but it was like he was poor one day and the next day he was a great landowner. But the oddest thing about it was as if, he could smell trouble. He knew when it was going to happen, and he would be there, ready to buy off your land, to take away your daughter, to take your crops, to push you off. It was as if he knew in advance, and he was a sure wager. "I am looking for this man. We have something to settle." Yes, sir, I just saw him. And she explained, she'd just seen him coming out of the tavern, as drunk could be. She had never seen him this drunk before. And she felt oddly relieved that he didn't want anything to do with her, the stranger on the horse. "I thank you. If you'll tell me where he is." I saw him in town. He was leaving the tavern. You probably could find him somewhere in the square with, well, he didn't really have friends, but he did have partners in drink. No one ever turned him down. "Good evening." And with that, he took off. And as she watched, she saw him reach into his pocket, pull out a gold coin, flip it up, and disappear. Well, at first she thought it was down the road, down the bend. But then she saw him reach under his cloak and twist his forked tail around his neck. And then he was gone. And she went to the gold. She found herself drawn. She'd never seen gold before. And she started to pick it up, but it was too hot. And in the story my friend told me, my brother's girlfriend, who has become a friend since my brother's moved on to other women, that was it. She went home. But I've always wondered, how could a poor woman leave a gold coin? How could I leave $1 in the street? I guess it depends on where it comes from. I'd like to think she reached down with her apron and wrapped it around the coin and took it to the priest. But who knows if the priest would take it anyway? I mean, doesn't it matter where your money comes from? Thank you. Thank you guys for having me here. It's great listening to you all. And if you come to New York, here's my advertisement. If you come to New York, there's a lot of storytelling. You can go see the Moth. You can come see the Storytelling Center of New York City, which I used to head, and you could come to many different other venues. Just look me up, and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you, guys.
Before we